All right, let's get started. So I want to welcome all of you to the Fire Safe Nevada County Coalition workshop on organizing your Firewise community for greater engagement. And Kristen Cook, the leader of the UBET Firewise community, is going to be leading this. And Mo Graber from the Banner Mountain community is also going to be.
Thank you so much, Joanne. This is Kristen Cook, aka KC, and I'm thrilled to facilitate this discussion tonight. When Joanne asked myself and Mo to participate with the workshops, I was kind of excited because she's leading them all. So she's sharing the wealth. So thanks, Joanne, for the opportunity. And Mo, you will be hearing from shortly. What we have planned for you guys this evening around community engagement is, in essence, some of the tools and tactics that we each use in our Firewise communities to help get our neighbors involved. But me being me, I always like to start with the why, not the what. So the how do we get our community members engaged, to me, starts with our purpose. And the goal here is to help each of you guys in your Firewise communities learn what we're doing to build a resilient, engaged Firewise community. One of the key elements, of course, is constantly saying together, and Joanne always underscores stronger together. So that's kind of what we're looking at here, is that we really want to focus on the reality that no one person can do this alone. And we need to have a variety of people with different skill sets, different backgrounds, and different motivations, frankly. That's what helps spread the workload and helps making this leading the Firewise community job a little bit easier. The other thing is there's no one right answer. There's no one size fits all, and we each do it differently. And I find that over the 7 years that I've been leading the UBET Firewise community, that even my methods and approach has changed significantly as I've learned more, as I've met new neighbors, as people go in and out. My approach changes as well. Wanted to talk a little bit about, if you're leading a Firewise community, I think it's really important to understand why you're doing that. And what is it that's your trigger? What's your motivation? As we say, search for your why. I'm going to tell my brief story about my why. So when I first started Firewise, I moved into the UBET community and the campfire had occurred. And this neighborhood, which is large, as you'll see in a minute, has a strong history of fire safety. And there were a lot of people who for decades had been involved in driving fire awareness, clearing the roads, and things like that. So it had a culture of work parties. But what I looked at after the campfire in Paradise was, do I stay or do I go? Am I moving or am I staying? And the reality for me was I didn't know if I could stay. And I started investigating and was asked to start a Firewise community. And that's when I discovered the video, Jack Cohen, Your Home Can Survive a Wildfire. I'm getting an echo here, Jeff, if there's somebody who's not muted. And that video, the Jack Cohen, Your Home Can Survive a Wildfire, it's pretty old at this point. I think it was somewhere around 2012. But what it did for me is it gave me tools and an understanding that if I took certain actions personally, I could improve the odds of my home surviving. So that really, in turn, for those of you who don't know, he is the father of the home ignition zone, which ultimately turned into NFPA's Firewise program. So he kind of pioneered, as a fire scientist, all of these things, that your home doesn't burn by flame front, it burns by embers. And so I started down this path, journey, if you will, in terms of learning more about fire, more about how I could protect my home. I learned about defensible space. And that's really what I think gave me the motivation to help my neighbors and to start to think about, how if I could start to have hope, then so could others. So that's where we led, kind of my why, right? So when I talk to neighbors, often I'll share that video with them. They get overwhelmed easily. And I set the stage for, we can together work toward creating a more fire adapted community. Oh boy, we're freezing here. There we go. So that was back when I started about 7 years ago. fast forward to today. This is a visual I created within the last 2 weeks and shared out with one of my quarterly neighborhood leader meetings. And because of the response that I got and the request for sharing it more broadly from my neighbors, I thought I'd share it with you guys. So, as I said, I'm constantly struggling and changing my approach and looking for things that work. And what I think, one thing that sort of dawned on me and I realized is that I need to be very clear around engagement, what I'm asking my neighbors to do. So I boiled it down really simply to either you're hurting us, you're neutral, or you're helping us. And where I came out was neutral doesn't mean do nothing. Neutral means that you have hardened your home and you have taken care of your own property and you have defensible space. And what you're not doing is creating a hazard in the community by not clearing up your property, right? So neutral means you are contributing. You may not be coming out and doing the work parties and things like that. You may not be administrating, but that's okay. For me, neutral is good. So I set the stage for that as the baseline. So the baseline is that's what I'm expecting. And now with kind of having my purpose and, understanding that, I also have this conversation around engagement for we're only as strong as each one of us together is participating. And it's like a chain analogy. And if you have a weak link, the entire chain can break. And so over the years, what I've learned, obviously, with wildfire is that you can't have just one parcel be thinned and cleared. It's contiguous properties. It needs to be enough of an effort to slow down that fire. So, we're trying to build a stronger chain and a longer chain. And that's one parcel at a time and one person at a time. So with that opening, the purpose, the why, and having, a really strong why you're doing this, it's kind of like then I, focus in on a strong leadership structure, which I've built, but I continually have to babysit that. So one of the things that I think every Firewise community has in common is that we all have our maps, we all have our parcels, and we all have a footprint that we're working against. The thing that we look at, and I think, a lot of Firewise communities do this in different ways. They subdivide into neighborhoods. You can call them a block captain, a zone captain, a neighborhood leader. It doesn't matter. But the reality is that it allows each of us to delegate. And to me, more importantly, is you learn how different people do run their neighborhoods differently, and you kind of get a best practice opportunity. And this works regardless of if your Firewise community has 30 parcels or 700 parcels or 1,200 parcels. Just giving people responsibility gives you the opportunity to, like I said, share out 2 points of contact or better, 3 points of contact or even better. The other thing that I have found in terms of having these neighborhood leaders in place is that when it comes time for like grants and OES says, hey, we may have some opportunity to do green waste or whatever it might be, having that infrastructure in place already allows you as a leader to be more effective, faster, and with less effort. You want to chime in on that at all, Mo? You're muted, darling. You're muted. Sorry.
You've already given like the very nutshell of it. The more people we interact with, the greater our reach. People are far more likely to say, I'll receive information than they are to step up and be a neighborhood contact. So one of my jobs, as I see it, is to reassure that it's really not a lot of work. There are certain people in our community that are they're kind of keyed to being leaders or talkers or interactors. So I try to find those people within our community who are willing to reach out or willing to kind of shepherd different things through our streets and roads. There will always be far more people who want to observe, but who are willing to help during times of crisis. And that's still very valuable. So I don't discount anyone in the neighborhood, regardless of their activity level. It all helps us be successful. Thank you.
Exactly. And I like what you said about the talkers. And I look at neighborhood leaders as being our storytellers. And so I ask those folks to attend a quarterly meeting, and that's just around my neighborhood leaders. And they kind of get the deep dive, the background, the why, what's current, and things of that nature. And then we ask them to translate that back to their immediate households. By way of making this real, for those of you who don't know You Bet Firewise, we are off of 174 coming out of Grass Valley, halfway toward Colfax. If you're going from Grass Valley toward Colfax, on the left-hand side, You Bet Road. On the left side of your map here is where it meets at 174. And that black line, it goes all the way up and all the way down 9 miles, dead ends into the Peninsula Campground at Rollins Lake. And then we go up Chalk Bluff, heading up Chalk Bluff from You Bet to Highway 20 is about 13 miles. So we don't go all the way up there, but we are geographically the largest Firewise community in California. I think the nation, but NFPA can't confirm that. And it's huge. There's no question about it. But the one thing we have going for us is because we take the negatives and turn them to positives, right? So having a 9 mile one way in, one way out road with this kind of topography is a really bad thing. But what's good is anybody who uses our one road is part of our community. So with that said, I am able to create a community that is dependent. And I'll tell you guys, I did spend years working with this group on the left. You can see all these areas, Sontag, Mulberry, etc. Every single one of them felt like they didn't need anybody else on UBET because they could just evacuate out UBET and go 174. So the message that I'm always saying, which happens to be true, is that there is a fire scenario where none of us can get off 174 and we're all blocked. So when I ask those folks, which is the most of our residents, because they have the smaller parcels, where will you go? It's a deer in the headlight response that I get. And they're like, I haven't been up UBET in 20 years. And I'm like, okay, well, now's the time. So for the last few years, we've been really successful in shrinking the community and helping people understand that there are some fire scenarios where we are going to need to rely on each other. So back to sort of the structure component, these sections and the colors are my neighborhood areas. And my goal is to have at least 2, ideally 3 households represent each of those areas. It's an ebb and a flow. Sometimes I have them all full, sometimes I'm open. The chart and legend on the right gives you guys some perspective in terms of the size. So I think our smallest one is about 27 parcels, 136 acres. And then we go all the way up to sort of the bigger ones at 67 parcels, 1,700 acres. And of course, if you guys have been out in our neck of the woods, Chalk Bluff is 87 parcels and almost 5,000 acres. So when we start talking about people taking ownership, I can't possibly know the ins and outs of all of these areas, but we have residents who have been here for generations or decades, and some who moved here 2 months ago. So we really, really rely on each other to share the knowledge and learn together about what the ins and outs of each area are and how to be safer. I think this next section, when we talk about your block captains or leaders, is that all of us, we don't want to have people fending for themselves, figuring out what to do. So, get them started in any form or fashion that works for you. What I have done is ask people who are stepping up into that communication role to maintain, contact info for their neighborhoods, their buddy system, meet and greet new residents, focus on communications. And it's, like I said, not a one size fits all, but also help me with volunteers for the boots on the ground kind of projects too. Know who can do the work. The third piece, this is part of that learning journey. I feel like as Firewise leaders, part of our role is to stay on top of what's happening. Joanne was just hosting a workshop on Sunday, this kind of transition, if you will, from just monitoring your home defensible space and home hardening to what the insurance industry is looking for and being forward thinking about what makes a property fire ready, and then what makes a property eligible for insurance and things of that nature. So I look to the leadership group to at least track with what's going on in our industry. And last but not least, some of you know I am a fanatic when it comes to roads. They are our lifeline. And I look to the neighborhood leaders to understand that and start to advocate for clearing our roads for evacuation safety.
And I think you hit a very important component of this all, Casey, when you say information sharing. And the one thing that I've really appreciated with the coalition is if I go to their website, there are already campaign information available. There's already how-to guides available. I want to emphasize to our community, you don't have to start from nothing. There's a lot of available information from people that have tested and tried and prevailed. Just we want to really connect with each other and help each other. I've learned so much from you, Casey. I've learned so much from Jeff Peach. I've learned so much from Joanne Feitz Kaufman. I would have been so discouraged had I not had these people available who said, no, 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 no. This is the quickest way to handle it. These are the guides you want to use. Here's how you can best connect with your community. So I just want to reemphasize, as you said, there's information available to make things easier for each of us.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think one of the reasons I get tapped a lot to do to do some of these workshops and things is because my background is marketing and business communications, and so I'm kind of typically on the leading edge of figuring out what I need to say and then just figuring it out, and then everyone's like, "Oh, can I have that?" I'm like, "Sure." So anything that I'm working on personally for you, Ben, I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. I'm willing to do it, right? I'm willing to share that. I want to switch back to you mode though, because I suck at doing the neighbor welcome thing. It's been on my hit list for 7 years, and you guys have kind of nailed it. So please share what you guys are doing there.
Well, first, I don't believe you, Casey. But what we do at Banner Mountain, in particular, so for instance, in the Banner Mountain area, I am the neighborhood leader for my 8 streets. So when someone comes into the neighborhood who is new, or if you've been existing within the neighborhood for decades and we haven't reached out to you, I do a welcome neighbor packet. And the welcome neighbor packet is very easy to assemble because there's so many free materials available from the county. But in addition to the handouts available from the county, I give them our, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, our Firewise community boundaries. So they know you're included. Here's who you belong to. There's a resource available to help you. Then the next step, kind of in the middle, you see my confidential residential use only neighborhood map. So I want to connect neighbors, and with their permission, this one's been cleansed, but with their permission, I say, here's their parcel, here's their address. And if you look at my square, I give them, here's my phone number and here's who lives here. It's a way to connect community. I also give them, towards the right of the screen, things I wish I knew when I moved here. Like, do you know a metal shovel, snow sticks to it? I didn't know that. And I was exhausting myself until someone said, you should use a plastic shovel or put Pam spray on your metal shovel. So the things I learned and that neighbors helped me understand, and then different resources we have available, the different radio stations, Ubanet, the different Facebook groups, the coalition website. I put them all on one handout to say, hey, new neighbor or pre-existing neighbor, are you aware of these resources that are out there and available for you? So essentially, it's a point of contact. It provides reassurance. But through that reassurance, I'm then starting to talk to a new neighbor and letting them know that there's a support network available. And then just a little side story, when I moved here 5 years ago, I'm a transplanted retiree. I was introduced to mountain culture. And mountain culture is we stand alone, we're proud, we're fiercely independent, leave us alone. So when I got here, none of the neighbors spoke to each other. And as a suburbanite, I couldn't understand that. So I started connecting neighbors. We are now such an integrated, supportive, kind community that reaches out to each other. And then through this process, I invite them to our WhatsApp group. Some people use Signal, but large communication, applications that are available, and we are constantly talking to each other. Some are more talkative than others. We talk about bears and trash day spillage and wildfire starts and new neighbors coming on board. There is a way to connect with each other in a very casual, non intimidating fashion, to connect each other in a kind way so we know we're not alone. And when there is snowmageddon or wildfire, everyone flocks to our shared resource center and support each other. And it's really kind of amazing to watch this all roll out. And it's available, it is doable, and I highly recommend it to all of our different Firewise communities. We are it. We're the first people that are aware when things happen in our neighborhood. It takes, even though they're fantastic and quick, between CAL FIRE and sheriffs and Nevada County Consolidated, it takes them a while to gear up and get in. We already know what's happening. We can help each other get out safely. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Mo. That's awesome. I'm so glad Joanne's recording this. Two things I want to underscore on this kind of welcome neighbor package. We're not there yet. I do have a welcome letter, and what I have is someone monitoring our real estate sales. So obviously there's constant sales going on, and then I said don't hammer them, give them like 3 months or something after they've settled in. What's interesting now is, since we've been a Firewise community for 7 years, I've actually spoken to some people who have moved in, who have said, "Oh yeah, the guy, Ron sold the house and he left us our package. He left a package of what you guys are doing." So for the first time in the last 12 months, I've had new neighbors reaching out to me to get engaged, which was, kind of boggled my mind. I'm like, yes, yay, I like this, but that's kind of the trend and where I'm going once we're established. Certainly that's not the most frequent thing that happens, but it sure is nice. The thing I can't underscore enough, as we talk through the tools and tactics tonight, and I think Mo kind of hit on it already. The one benefit of Firewise leadership and asking people to get engaged, I cannot tell you how many people I have introduced to each other who've been 20, 30, 40 years residents in the UBEC community who have never met each other. And through Firewise, they are meeting and they end up talking and sharing old stories. And it blows me away. And the fact is, everyone says, "Oh my gosh, we're going to do X, Y, Z. Oh, and by the way, you get to meet really cool people." So that is something to, really leverage when you're talking to folks, especially if they're a little bit older or live alone. We have a lot of people who live alone. And by being involved, suddenly they have a built-in social network. So let's switch gears to some of the tools that work once we're up and running. And I'll kick this off, and then I'm going to turn it over to you on the next one, Mo. Effective communication is really about just talking to people, finding ways to reach them where they are, with tying into passions that they may already have or interests. We have quilters and master gardeners and all kinds of stuff in our neighborhood. And I try to keep that in mind. But, one of the things that was a rather hard lesson for me when I first moved here and did my first You Bet Firewise Town Hall in 2017 or 2018, whatever it was. And I, me being me, I was all about social media and I was all about, getting the word out. And everyone was like, no, we just need to print a banner and hang it at the beginning of the road. So I had 120 people in the meeting. I did a show of hands and I said, "Did you read about or find out about us through the Ubinet article, or did you find?" And a few people, sprinkles here and there, had seen everything. But when I asked about the banner, the 6-foot long banner, and right at the beginning of UBET, every hand went up. So I don't lose sight of that lesson. And I truly believe that, for me, like, my mailboxes are one of the key places I make sure our flyers go up. Sometimes I have to fight with the post office about that, etc. But make sure to use a lot of different communication vehicles. And Jeff's going to play some guitar for us because that's what he does. And Mo, take it away. Talk about newsletters.
So I'm very fortunate that the Banner Mountain Firewise has an affiliation with the Friends of Banner Mountain. And Friends of Banner Mountain has a website that they provide, and we've got a section of the website for our Banner Mountain Firewise information. And they also have an e-subscriber list. So average about 3 times a month, we reach out to our e-subscriber list, which is several hundred people, and we provide information that we hope supports them in their efforts in making us more wildfire resilient. So, free green waste events, information on homeowners insurance, information on defensible space, upcoming legislation, interesting information being put out by the Department of Insurance. So, we find that by doing some of the homework for our e-subscribers and providing it with links that make it easy for them to digest available information, they become more involved and more participative. So whichever avenue you might have available to you, I'm like Casey. I think if I could put out one notice and it goes to my whole community through social media, whether it's Nextdoor, a Facebook page, an e-subscriber list, we take advantage of all those things. Because if you put it out in multiple different available options, you're going to hit more people. And I do find, and Jeff has taught me this, if you can make things available and a little bit easier for your community, they're more likely to read it and more likely to learn. And we believe that our stewardship is about educating. I'm always surprised that I think everybody knows all this information because it's on Ubinet, it's in the union, and it's on social media. But I'm always taken aback when people say, I didn't hear about this. I didn't even know I was in a Firewise community. So the more ways we can reach out, whether it's a street sign, a sidewalk sign, a next door neighbor comment, a Facebook comment, any way you can reach out to your community, or like I do, these little printed off folders that I give to individual neighbors. There are multiple ways you can reach people, and different people digest information in different ways. So try to think about what makes sense for your user group. Where I am, we have a large community of people over 70. So I always have to be corrected when I say, well, it's on Facebook. Well, I have a lot of people that don't use Facebook, and that means a letter. So just understand your community, what's the demographics, and what's the best way to provide them information that they can find accessible.
Yeah, and I am curious, do you actually, print copies of the newsletter? Like I know some neighborhoods have had containers where they'll print and pile up newsletters for people to take as they enter their communities. Do you guys do that?
That's an awesome idea. We haven't just because the expense and our particular Firewise community is so large. It would take quite a bit of funds to do those and put them out. And I don't know that we have the data that would suggest people would grab those flyers to make it to warrant the expense. But once a year to our membership list, we send a formal letter. We do a formal paper mailing. So we do that once a year. It's expensive, but it's another way to hit a touch point with people that may not be online.
Yeah, I've struggled with that as well. And I don't have a formal newsletter. I don't have anything printed. I rely super heavy on those neighborhood leaders in my 20 different sections. I do ask them to print certain things and post them in their neighborhood or get them into their neighbors' hands or put them on the mailboxes. I would love to do, for me, I love postcards. I love
That's
soundbite communication. I would love to be able to do that, but I don't have any funding. We're not we're huge, but we're not a nonprofit. We're just, volunteers helping. So I don't have a backdrop of any organization to support. But it's one of those things where I've got all great ideas, but we do what we can do, and that I think is the message. Whatever you can figure out that works for you guys, that's cost effective. So we're going to go through some of the examples that Mo just talked about. Some of the, and this plays off of the banner idea, where I said, put a banner at the beginning of your road. And many of you know Bob Long, Sherwood, Firewise, and he's been doing this for years too. But in essence, anything that's like real, handwritten or, homemade, it seems to really get attention. And we can use these alerts for anything and everything, whether it's a chipper day, a green waste, whatever it might be. And they're relatively speaking low cost. I don't have this as an example, but I did a town hall, and I'm not good at hand drawing sign making and stuff. And I thought I was being clever trying to make it super colorful. And everyone's like, that is the worst sign I've ever seen. It was ugly. There was no
Oh, come
artistry
on.
to it, but everybody talked about it. It was so bad, it was good. So the message there is don't worry about making it look good, just do it. To that point, why don't you just share what you have on the left here, Mo?
So, what I have found, I like to make connections. I started out with my street and then my adjacent street and the next adjacent street. And then I found this great opportunity called the Nevada County Micro Grant Program. And through the micro grant, I could pick another street, maybe a little bit further away, still in my community, and reach out to a bunch of similarly minded neighbors and say, I've got some money available if you're going to help me do some vegetation mitigation. And I meet a whole nother group of neighbors I would not have otherwise met. And I put street signs up to first attract their attention. The very first street sign actually had a QRC code to come to my website and solicit input, interest, and volunteers. And then from that point on, I put multiple different street signs. I have one street sign and I switch out that little cheapy white square block saying, here's when we're going to meet. And people show up. I met these wonderful people on a street that I would have ordinarily not even stepped foot on. And we became a community, and now they're added to my WhatsApp group. And they were educated. We talked about Friends of Banner Mountain. We talked about Banner Mountain Firewise. We talked about defensible space and home hardening, and they were really excited. So I look for different ways to do an outreach because we are all in the same situation in a very high wildfire risk area, combating high costs for vegetation mitigation, combating high costs for homeowners insurance. We have so many similar issues that by putting a sign on the end of the street and they say, oh my gosh, you're going to help us. And the next question is always, what's in it for you? And I love that because I say absolutely nothing other than I got to meet you and I'm getting to share information. And the more people on streets around me that I can help and educate and connect, the safer my home is. So I try to just share that information. We're all in this together.
That's awesome. And I love the idea of kind of creating that poster board backdrop and being able to switch it out and reuse it.
Mhm.
On the right, what you guys will see is one of my neighborhood leaders, Kurt, in the Mulberry section. And I've mentioned the Ubet Road is 9 miles one way in, one way out. Off of Ubet Road, there's about 30 roads, which is what sort of drives the sections. And then there are multiple roads off that. So we have over 80 roads in total in the Ubet community. And when I mentioned each neighborhood leader sort of does what they do, right? This one, Kurt has been around doing fire safety for decades. I learned as much from him. On the chair, he puts a chair, everybody who comes up Mulberry and has to go in and out. It is the funniest thing to me. I call him the duct tape king. He was one year my neighborhood leader of the year, and he got a roll of duct tape as his prize because I can't imagine how much he spends on duct tape. But it's always this. And I go in sometimes, I'm like, I wonder how Kurt is positioning this. And I'm always delighted to see a chair with a poster board to see what he's telling his neighbors. And sometimes there's a letter there. Some of the neighbors will tell me it's like, once Kurt says it, you just do it, and he'll put a letter. And he's a little more firm than I am because he's been doing it for decades and he knows everybody there. So he can message in a way that I can't, and I love it. The whole notion of neighborhood maps and contact lists, one of the things both Mo and I have in common is that our areas are so big, and she's already talked a little bit about her area map. I do make sure that each of my neighborhoods have the map with their parcels and they can follow along with that. And then we kind of coordinate in terms of, I have a master Ubet Firewise list, which I build via MailChimp. But they keep their own list too. So we're constantly back and forth. There are some people that don't want the whole Ubet community to have their contact info. So I rely on the neighborhood leaders there. So we have kind of a two-tier system. But keeping that up to date is just an ongoing and kind of a consistent backdrop to the foundation of the program. I also wanted to tell the story about when I started Firewise and was interviewing all the people who've been doing it in UBET for the last couple decades. And they were pounding me about the phone tree and making sure that, I understood that this is the way to do it. And I listened, and I was really more about the digital age. And they were saying, no, you're too corporate and all this kind of stuff. So I said, okay, let me entertain this. So talk to me about your phone tree and how did it work? And they said, well, they did the structure, right? So one person had 5 people on the list and so forth and so on. And so I said, well, how did it work? And their shoulders went down. They go, it didn't. People were out of town. You could never figure out who was who. It was handwritten. There was no way to transition it. So yeah, so I just wanted to share, if that's what works for you guys and you have smaller communities, then God bless you. Go for it, right? The one game changer for UBET has been our radio system. A lot of you guys have heard me give an overview of our handheld radios for communication. We've presented at the coalition, and we were assisted by the Nevada County Aries group, which is amateur radio. And we launched 4 years ago. We're currently in our 4th wildfire season. And I have over 100 households and over 150 people on our radios throughout that map that you guys saw earlier. So for us, from a communication and kind of a leadership and engagement, this has been probably the one thing that has shrunk our boundaries and pulled us together. I just did a series of radio events over the last 2 weeks, including one gal. She hosted a get to know you on the radios, kind of a happy hour last Saturday night, and the community has voted to keep this active year round, not just in fire season. So to Mo's point about the group chat, we get out and we help people with snow shoveling. We've had a lost horse, and all of a sudden 5 guys within 20 minutes are out looking for the horse and communicating via radios, who's checking the power lines and that kind of thing. We absolutely use it for fires. That's our primary reason. And we're dialed in. So I don't want to go on because you guys heard me wax poetic about the radios a lot, but it is an absolutely crucial tool to our background. So kind of to summarize, just use everything in your power. Like Mo said, different people are going to hear it different ways. And what I don't have on here is just word of mouth. In our communities, we're all kind of rural. You identified it with sort of that mountain mentality. Blows me away. No matter what I do, I do have people younger who say, Casey, I don't read your emails. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you expect me to do? I'm communicating out to X hundreds of people. I can't call everybody, So I do look at some of the blanket communication, newsletters, emails, and things of that nature as giving a platform and a springboard to everyone else to communicate those points, right? So it's sort of okay, here's what we're talking about now. And then just encourage people to share that out. Anything you want to close on that, Mo? Are we good?
I think you articulated that very well. Different people receive information in different ways. So it's our responsibility, I believe, to look at all the different options that are available. Like I say, I use Nextdoor. I'm not a big Nextdoor person, but I have neighbors who enjoy that. I'm not a big Facebook person, but I have people who are. It's just understanding the needs of my little group. And once I meet them, I can kind of size it up pretty quickly. I know who my paper people are. And I've left letters at doorstops because I know that's the best way to communicate with some people. But I just once I create a message, I can release it in multiple different ways with not a lot of extra effort. So that's kind of how I approach it. One good message, and I'll sprinkle it in multiple different medias.
That's perfect. And Joanne has talked to me a little bit about social media and kind of how, I've been doing that. And as I've learned new skills this past year, I'm doing a little bit more of that because I found that I do have a really big audience on Facebook and Nextdoor because we have a lot of people who've relocated here from out of area. So they're used to social media. And I've got significant new kind of younger families. We're getting a huge a huge onslaught of babies and kids and all that kind of stuff. So the UBET generation coming up is going to be very digitally oriented. So I just wanted to share a few things. We've already talked a little bit about the central websites. I do have a screenshot from your website. So again, sort of your traditional dedicated sources, and then I'm gonna share with you guys some visuals, some graphics that I've used recently in UBET social media just to give you guys some ideas, but I won't belabor it. So first up, in terms of your backbone, I know at Banner Mountain, you mentioned already that you have the Friends of Banner Mountain, but what I wanted you to share is this is one of the key elements is really around highlighting the work and giving people shout outs.
Well, I think this goes to the whole idea of storytelling. And when I have the opportunity, I'm a kind of a picture person. I love taking photos of people that are contributing. We have such a lovely, resilient neighborhood and they're not too camera shy. I've got to encourage them a little bit, but I will take lots of photos and then work with Jeff to post those on our website because it tells the story that you don't have to be 18, you don't have to be muscle bound, you just have to care. So I'm look at me, I'm the girl on the left with the yellow vest. I'm not in the best shape. I don't, and my husband won't allow me to use a chainsaw, but I can use my skills to coordinate and collaborate with like-minded people. And the more we tell our stories, the we can normalize come out of your house. You don't have to have all the equipment. Just come out. You can bring water. You can bring brownies. You can support the group that wants to come in and cut trees down. I'm just trying to normalize that it's okay to step out of your house and not be super skilled, and we can still make a significant difference on our roads.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I in my last community greenways project, I actually had a sign up and I said I defined it by easy work, medium work, and hard work. And I described each, and then all of a sudden I got way more volunteers because they weren't intimidated. So the easy work is hold the clipboard and say hi to people. Medium work was direct traffic and help offload. The hard work was run the chipper, the chainsaw, the tractor, and so forth. And it was really awesome. But I think that speaks to making sure that you get in where you fit in, and making sure everyone has a home.
And I think you bring up a good point. If you look at one of the pictures, like I say, we're all different physical capabilities, all different ages. We have people that never don't step out of their house that often to engage with their community. When I provide them an opportunity, they come out, and the socialization that happens is amazing to watch. We have people with a lot of background in the community, a lot of history, and it's an opportunity to share that. People love the opportunity to get out and interact with each other, and we can provide that.
Yep. And I mentioned this is on the Banner Mountain website. So switching gears a little bit, I don't have a website for UBET Firewise. As I mentioned, I do rely pretty heavily on our community Facebook page. The UBET Community Neighbors is the group. As you can see here on the left, there's 671 people in there. In my mail list for UBET Firewise, I only have 275. I just purged a bunch of people who left. So for me, like, do I do social media? Well, hell yes, I do. I have no choice, right? That's where the audience is. I did, however, a couple of years ago, create a UBET Firewise page. I'm not that savvy. I had to link it. Bottom line is I do have a place where I look at the UBET Firewise page as doing more of the the more kind of fire ready, all of the stuff we should do. And then the community neighbors, I post there for events and actions and more people oriented things to keep it more social. So that's just how I've been approaching this. And then I wanted to walk through a few things that Mo mentioned, the QR codes, the quick signups. I've been using those pretty effectively for the last few years on the left, which is, how do you sign up for my mailing list and how do I promote it? Obviously, you just point your phone at it, you open your camera, it creates a link, they can then sign up. And in that sign up, I have like a series of 5 questions in terms of what their programs they might be interested in. Would they like to have a defensible space visit? Are they interested in learning more about our emergency radio program? And then I say, how can you help You Bet be more fire safe? And they can check the boxes. So they don't have to write anything. It's all just check boxes, and it's super simple. So that has worked out well. And then on the right, this one's brand new. I just created this last week. This is about our annual Firewise reporting. And so, it's just one of those things, we'd all do it different ways. I do a Google form, as Jeff knows. He and I shared that at the Coalition of Firewise Communities a couple of years ago. And it's super easy. People input their information. It downloads into a big Excel spreadsheet. I massage it, and off I go to NFPA. But this year, I'm always like, you need to report what you do, and it keeps us Firewise, recognition and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Do you like our community? Tell us what you've done to help, right? So I'm doing that in messaging in a couple of different ways. Another way that I'm using social media, whether it's Nextdoor or Facebook, is I'm starting to find and look for opportunities that are, just-in-time messaging, right? So in You Bet area, we do get a lot of fires. We've had a rash of them this past summer. We're bordered by Steep Hollow Creek at the Bear River, and then on the other side, the Greenhorn Creek, both of which are heavily trafficked for recreation. We do get a lot of, illegal camping going on and things of that nature, and therefore a lot of fire starts. So this isn't someday be ready for the big fire. These are fires that happen immediately. And I use those as a way to highlight the fire safe communication tools that we have. And I mentioned the radios for us. So like on the left, that's a graphic that I pulled together in maybe 20 minutes and posted it out on Facebook and Nextdoor as a way of sharing that we're in peak fire season, and our radios are frankly the earliest communication tool that we have. And then because of the interest, I held a radio training last Saturday. I mentioned we had a social happy hour, get to know you, and we've been doing evacuation drills via the radios. So one of my personal mantras is we don't wait for someone else to do it for us. We do it for ourselves. And so that's kind of where we've been. Earlier this year, I hosted a series of online Zoom meetings for my community. One was around evacuation in terms of understanding what the routes are, because we only have one, and where they would go if they were trapped. One was around shelter in place. And the third one was on PPE, personal protective gear, and what kinds of items that people should have if you're trapped in your vehicle or if you're just evacuating. So those have all been things that I've been promoting via social media. On the left here is the bad AI graphic that I threw together the morning of last Saturday, right? We were getting together for happy hour. So it's just a quick social reminder. So social media is really good for things that are fleeting. It's not something that you want to have something that's super important. The other one on the right is just another visual encouraging people to participate in our evacuation drills last Saturday and again 3 weeks ago. So if you tell people that they might get stuck, they pay attention. Evacuation is always a good key hook to use to get people's attention. On the left here is one of the evacuation drills, just another quick graphic. In the middle, this is actually kind of fun. Last week, as you guys know, we started getting a lot of rain, and I was hearing all over the place, I'm monitoring CAL FIRE, that there's debris checks, smoke checks. Everybody started lighting up thinking they could start burning. So I created this graphic, and subsequently I ended up having a conversation with CAL FIRE Chief Chiswick on some of these fires we're having. He goes, "Oh, I'm glad you called, because you're on my list. You've been having so many fires out there. I want you to tell your neighbors not to burn." And I had just put this out on social media the day before. I'm like, I already did that. He's like, "Oh, good job." So I beat CAL FIRE to the message this time. And then on the right, just, hey, we have a weekly social. If you guys want to come by, bring your radio. You're making it informal, no pressure. So these are all just examples of how I use social media. Regardless of what tools you choose to use or how you do it, as a Firewise leader, communication is your key role, right? So the art of communication is your leadership language? All right, so now we're going to switch gears a little bit. Make it fun, make it easy. I mean, I think this is the stuff where, what you do, it really almost doesn't matter. Just do something. Weave in Firewise to it. We did a yard sale last year. It was exhausting. I probably will never do it again, but I did have a booth, and neighbors who didn't want to sell their stuff, they donated their stuff to the Firewise booth. So anything we sold was a fundraiser, but the main part of the event was a social, everybody was there was a potluck, and we were able to sneak in some fire safety stuff around it. The one thing I will say on the picture on the right, one tactic that we have used effectively because we have dead end roads is, this is my friend and cohort Anathea. We'll go out with a clipboard and stand at the roads, and people drive by, and they're neighbors. They know that if you're here, you live here. And we literally stop every car that goes by and says, hey, we're doing a Scotch broom party this weekend and we need volunteers. And they're like, what? Who are you? Where do you live? And then traffic backs up. They all want to sit and talk to us, especially when I have her with me. But yeah, so, it's like, stop traffic. Literally, you guys get in their face, ask them. There's no reason why everything has to be printed and formal, one-on-one communication. She and I joke, we call it our clown suits, and we just go out and start talking to people. All right, back to you, Mo.
But I think that just speaks again to having the willingness to reach out and challenge people. These are actually the neighbors closest to where I live. And I said, hey, I have an opportunity for us all to work together to clear this small street we haven't touched before. Who wants to come with me? This is the date I'm going to be there. I'll provide snacks and water. Who wants to come out? And you can see these are just your average neighbor people. We are not lumberjacks. We are from all walks of life. And yet I just said, I'll be here at the corner of this street and this street. I'll have my stuff. If you've got a chainsaw or what do you call them? Those
Pole saws.
Pole saws, rakes, trailers, whatever you have, we're going to cut stuff down, slash stuff out, and make chipping piles. And they all showed up, and we laughed. And I thought it was going to be a 6-hour day. We were done in 4 hours because they just kicked it. And we made connections with neighbors we hadn't met yet. It was a wonderful experience. And you can tell by the smiles, people worked hard, but they were relaxed and they appreciated the opportunity.
Yeah, and I think something you're really good at, you always are so gracious and say thank you to everyone more than
Oh,
anyone
I
I've
love
ever
them.
known. But
I love them. Yeah.
you're good with the shout outs, and I think that's
Mhm.
important. The one thing that I've done a couple times with like our big events, community events, is a video, and I post that out. People love to see themselves in pictures and videos. So that's super cool. All right, so we're going to open this up to anyone who's on the call, and then we do have a few parting thoughts before you go, and some sort of kind of big picture, just wrap it up things. But before we go there, we want to open it up and hear what you have to say. Any ideas that you've had that we didn't cover that we should be including in the coalition going forward, and or feedback. So you can unmute yourself if you have something you'd like to contribute.
This is Joanne, and I have plenty to contribute, but I asked Terry from the Deer Creek South Side to join us because they have a very interesting and enticing organizational structure where they spread out the leadership work. So, Terry, I hope you can chime in here.
Sure. And thanks again. I am Terry Voorhees, and I'm with the Deer Creek South Side, and we are located right in downtown Nevada City. And so we don't have, all the acreage. I've just been blown away listening to KC and Mo talk about their areas. We are in the residential area and have about 250 parcels that we're managing. But we became a recognized Firewise community in 2019. And that was right when I moved. I moved up from the Bay Area as well. And I found it was such an amazing way to meet my neighbors and learn about living in the woods. I used to live by the ocean, didn't know anything about this. And so we had some very active long-term neighbors that really wanted to get this going. So we kicked it off, and we were recognized by the end of the year. So we started in April doing just some house parties and house meetings to gauge interest, and then by the end we were a recognized community. And I'd say at the beginning we did have more of a president, vice president at the very beginning. But then soon after that, we had a quick turnover during COVID in the neighborhood. And a lot of our long-term residents moved to be closer to family. But there was a really big turnover. And so we reformulated the committee. And what we decided was just let's gather once a month, and it's a really loose structure. We don't have we do have area reps, which is like the block captains, and that's very helpful. But we have the 10 of us divvy out duties, and we just take on what we most enjoy. And so I do the website, and we also have the distribution list done through MailChimp. I handle all of that, but we've got the area reps. We have some people that are working mostly on outreach. And then we also identify every area where we want to have a relationship. So we have 3 schools. So we make sure that we've got one person who is always in contact with the schools. And then we have some of the businesses, and that's another person. So we've just identified the needs as we've gone along. And at every month when we meet, it's just like, okay, here are some of the new things where we need somebody to jump in. And so we're kind of always switching things up for one another. And also it helps if you've got somebody might have a health issue one year, and so they can step back and somebody will come and fill it in. So it's a really fluid structure. And so we call it a flat structure. There isn't any official titles or anything like that.
Terry, that's awesome. I'd love to ask the question. You mentioned your 10 folks. How consistent, since you started your Firewise community, how consistent have those people been, your 10 people, or do they turn over, or how do you rotate that?
So I mentioned at the very beginning in 2020, we lost the president and the vice president through moves. And so we reformulated, and it's been the same 10. We've added, there was a new person who moved in he was very involved in the Marin Firewise community. He came on board probably 5 years ago. But it's been very consistent. We haven't had any turnover. We've had maybe 1 or 2 additions.
Right.
Yeah, and so we're always, as we meet new neighbors that come in too at different events, we're always encouraging people if they'd like to join. So we haven't really had anyone new come in like the last 2 years. But other than that, it has remained the same core group.
That's awesome, Terry. And I'll share that I aspire to that. I'm the person I'm my own worst enemy. So we had a core group, and I spent more times in meetings and conversations and discussing what we should do than doing. So I ended up taking, I'm like a train going out of the tracks. Once I get going, you can't stop me. And I'm very prolific. So I set myself this mission of getting everything set up because we are so big. And now I've been working on exactly what you're talking about. And I'd love to talk to you further, but I'm looking at like the scope of everything we have someone in charge of defensible space, have someone in charge of home hardening, someone for the radio program, and I'm got one guy who's going to be all things fire. Joanne knows him, and I'm starting to do that. And just so you guys know, what I'm also messaging is I'm aging out, and I want to do a seamless transition. Otherwise, it will fall off a cliff and come to a stop. So I'm
Now,
using,
Casey, no.
yeah.
You're ageless. You're ageless. But what I do think what Terry is illustrating and what you're kind of reinforcing, we're all different, but we're similar. So all
Yeah,
Firewise community leaders, we have different challenges. We have different support mechanisms. We have the same goal. But there's a lot of information within each Firewise community, things that are proven and tested and modeled. So again, I think our greatest strengths are the Terrys and the KCs and the Jeffs and the Joannes who have done all these different pieces. And I just want to reemphasize to all of our listeners, go to the coalition website. This information is being shared. I copy stuff from that website and put it on my Facebook and put it in my emails. It's already there for me. This experience exists. We have to really lean into each other. We've got some amazing people that are leading these communities and they have great insight. So let's share.
Mhm. And Mo, on to
So
that too.
I want to I just want to share something short, Joanne here. I have started testing a new tactic, and that is to assign or ask young people to just take on one task for me. So I'm
exactly.
kind of luring them in and they're saying, can you do this one thing? We'll see how.
You kind of broke up there, Joanne, but I think we heard you say, asking people to take on one thing and see how it goes and get them involved.
Yes.
Yeah. And are you trying to say something? Looks like your thing is moving.
Uh, is that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I've been trying to ask a couple of questions for the last. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm new to this, and I was just curious, and excuse my ignorance, but why are you reaching? Are schools and businesses in your Firewise community, Gary, and that's why you're reaching out to them, or because if there's
So a big part for us, the Deer Creek School, Forest Charter, they're all within our boundaries.
Oh,
And so there are, as just they're definitely a partner of ours. And so we have made sure that we have relationships at each of the schools. And so that if we're finding that, sometimes we've seen like great overgrowth and that maybe some clearing is required. Um, we'll go and talk to, our main person. We'll go talk to them, and it's been working out great. They're incredibly receptive. And then the other thing was evacuation has always been a top concern of the residents because they're concerned about when the schools, when the parents are coming in to get their children. And so we always want to make sure we're partnering with anyone within our boundaries.
okay. Thanks for clarifying that because it's like because our closest school is Chicago Park and they're way far from us. I'm in Bear River Pines, so and we're teeny tiny compared to you guys. The other question I had is we had our first DSAV visits last Saturday, and one of the things that all three of the advisors mentioned was that entering our community is very hazardous for evacuation because it's just a narrow road and there's tree branches growing over. And we've been waiting for PG&E to kind of take those branches off because they're power lines, but they don't. I don't know how they decide which ones to trim and which ones not to. But he was saying that we really should have like 10 feet clearance on, I don't know if it's on either side of the road or total 5 feet and 5 feet on either side of the road and 15 feet high. Well, we're not deep pockets here. So, and people are very attached to their trees. So how could we, who do we talk to about trying to make this safe for everybody?
So I'm kind of working on something similar right now, Deepa, just so you're aware. Um, so I also have a road that we're looking at that has the overarching touching trees, lots of established trees, people who love their trees. The bottom line is we have a resources code in the county that talks about 15 feet up and at least 10 feet from each side of the roadway.
Wow.
So the road 10 on each side minimum. And we want to approach our neighbors cooperatively. This is the code. So you can either cooperate with us and we'll work together, either our work party or an available grant to get these trees limbed up or some of them, in some cases, removed, or you can do it yourself.
Mhm.
So either way, the work needs to be done. We don't want to have, I call them the ceiling tunnels where the trees touch each other over a roadway. We don't want to have our ingress and egress implicated or jeopardized because we have people who love trees. So it is a natural progression. When I first moved here, my husband didn't want to cut a tree, not one. You couldn't see our home from our road. In 5 years through education, it's like that means your canopy is touching. If the fire gets in the canopy, we are toast. We also need to work on the understory ladder fuels. I have learned in 5 years so much information, and as I educate my neighbors, and they're tree huggers too, and they like their privacy screens, a little bit each year, a little bit more cut back each year. No one's expecting everyone to come to the light in 1 year. But when I keep talking and keep showing and keep sharing, and there's some pretty amazing videos available through CAL FIRE that show the impact of removing some of the understory and thinning your trees, it is so sobering. I will send you, Deepa, the CAL FIRE video that's my favorite that talks about defendable space that is so eye-opening. It's an education, and it's also working with the county and the various cities' defensible space people. They really are gentle in trying to educate first and get people to do it cooperatively and voluntarily. Eventually, this state is going to move to, we've educated you, we've given you opportunities, now we're going to come in with the boom. So let's work together as Firewise communities to handle these things before we're told we have to and face fines.
Yeah, I'll
Thank
add to that, and I'm on my phone now, so I shouldn't be cut off. Um, that's where you have a work party, and most communities don't have deep pockets. And whether you get it all done or not, at least you get people participating, even if it's pruning a few limbs. And something to understand is that that 10 feet out and 15 feet up is only so a fire engine can park there and get by. It
Yep.
is not, you need to clear a lot farther back than that, but it's a great place to start. So, just even if you're only pruning a little bit with the work party, you got to start somewhere.
thank you. Yeah, well, one of the old timers who's been here for like 20 years, he said that when the fire chief beer wagon came by a few years back, he said, "Oh no," he says, we wouldn't be able to get our trucks in here, so we'll probably do an airdrop." So and we have fire hydrants, so it's like, well, then what's the point? So we want to talk to him and say, if we can get this cleared, would you guys come in, or would it still be a fire drop? I mean, a water drop, not a fire drop, a water drop.
And
Yeah,
Deepa, you're so right because that's how I got my neighbors around the curve. I said, do you understand that they have the authority to look down a road and say, you guys have done nothing. I'm not sending my men down there. That is a real practical firefighting decision. And once I explain that to my neighbors, it's like if I want them to know me, I want them to know my neighborhood. I want them to know my Firewise community and say, hey, that's a good zone. Our people are going to be safe. They're going to use their evacuation tags. They're going to clear up the trees so my trucks can get in. My men and women will be safe.
Mhm.
That's huge. And most of our residents don't understand those are the decisions made during a wildfire.
Yeah,
Thank
let me kind of chime in here on this and move us forward a little bit too. But perfect questions. And what I think is the takeaway here in terms of engagement is that as a Firewise leader, you don't need to have all of the answers. When I first started doing Firewise, I did a lot of roadside chats, I called them. And as Mo said, you know, the defensible space inspectors from OES or the sheriff's guys, they absolutely do come and support. And so when we find out what the questions are in our community, we can bring in the experts. And that's what this coalition is setting up to do. Mo, myself, Joanne, Jeff, a bunch of us have said we believe that we will survive together as a county. And that's why we are putting our time and effort into helping all of our Firewise communities become fire adapted. So thank you guys for sharing those thoughts. I want to just wrap with a couple of things, if I may. I started with this notion of setting a baseline expectation. Key thing for Firewise, you guys, I cannot tell you how many times I have heard people say, where's my Firewise certificate so I can get my insurance discount? Well, guess what? A Firewise program is just that. It means we're leading toward becoming fire safe, but it doesn't mean we are. So I don't give out my Firewise certificate to anyone unless I know that they are participating, and I will give them a fix-it ticket verbally. If they're not, I'll give it to you this time, but next year I may not because it's a one-year thing. So I basically give it to them and tell them via a defensible space visit, which I am certified, and tell them what needs to be fixing. And I ask them to participate so they get to neutral. They don't have to do anything else. So that's a really important kind of carrot to hang out there. So, you know, it's the carrot or the stick, right? In terms of engagement. Nobody wants to be known as the neighbor who's harming their neighbors. So I reflect back on this visual and want you guys to think about how you can use that in your communities. We've talked a lot and you know, Mo's awesome at showing, you know, what it is and the people. Ultimately, Firewise is all about the people, you guys. And I just love this quote from Henry Ford: coming together is a beginning. And that is what Firewise is. When people get recognized as a Firewise community, that's the start of this journey. It's not something we've achieved. It's the beginning. And we are taking steps together. Together is progress. Working together is absolutely success. These are just photos from one of our green waste events. You can see the girls on top doing the easy work, although Diane on the left, she gets in there and does the chipping too. There's a place for everyone, and everyone has a place. And then last but not least is we're talking about engagement and Firewise leaders. Purpose plus leadership plus communication plus participation is how we achieve our community success. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard many of you on this call say we're all in this together. And nothing could be more true when it comes to preparing for wildfire. Thank you for joining. Fantastic group. Let's get her done. Or as we say in You Bet, we have one final sign off. I asked my neighbors, are you ready for wildfire? And you know what their response is?
You bet.
So let's go and get her done. Thank you guys for joining.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your expertise and successes with us. Thank you so much.
Good to see you, Maria.